Hello, everybody, and welcome into a new episode of Capitol View, a weekly webcast brought to you by the Daily Journal and djournal.com. I'm your host, Brad Locke, joined as always from Jackson by Capitol Bureau Chief Bobby Harrison. Bobby, how's it going down there on a Monday?
All right, Brad, it's going fine. About 30 minutes ago, the fire alarms were going off right outside this office, so we might have had a hard time doing this 30 minutes ago. But there's no truth to the rumor that Governor Bryant took a good look at the budget and realized the cuts he was going to have to make and turned on the fire alarms. But there's no truth to that rumor.
Okay, well, the state budget is something we will talk about here in a few moments on Capitol View. Again, we come to you each Monday around 2 o'clock. Just talking about what's going on in the state capitol. Of course, the legislative session has been over for a while, but still plenty going on. You got the new fiscal year going to turn over here on July 1st, so certainly a lot to talk about with that. Bobby, let's first, though, start with a couple of stories you had on Sunday and Monday regarding oversight of the state bidding process. Of course, you got the whole scandal with Christopher Epps, the former commissioner of the Mississippi Department of Corrections. He's being tried for receiving bribes and awarding contracts to private companies. And so there's been some a bit of an overhaul, I guess, of that whole system. Bobby, what are they really trying to do with these changes?
Well, as you said, provide more oversight and transparency in the process of state agencies awarding contracts. There's something called the personal service contract review board, I think is what it's called.
That's it. Yeah, it's a mouthful.
And during the 2015 session 2 years ago, they kind of revamped that. Representative Jerry Turner from up in Baldwyn, who's chair of the House Accountability, Transparency and Accountability Committee, Accountability, Efficiency, and Transparency Committee, I think is what it's called. He was instrumental in getting the legislation through to overhaul that committee so it would have more oversight of the award of these contracts. He still thinks there's more to be done during the 2017 session, and he's working with his Senate counterpart, Senator Polk from down in Hattiesburg, who's chaired the same committee in the Senate, to try to get that done during the 2017 session. And what particularly Turner hopes to do is put what he calls best practices protocol into effect, where an agency would almost go through a checklist. They get when they were awarding contracts, they go through a bid process, and the low bid would receive so many points, but then there'd be other elements that went into the bid, like the proximity to Jackson, so it'd be cheaper and more convenient for a state agency if the company was closer to Jackson. Other things like that would go into the process, but that way just take all the question marks out of the process of awarding state contracts. And this kind of the impetus for the changes that were made in 2015 was, to a degree, the fact that Chris Epps was indicted in 2014 and has actually pleaded guilty to accepting almost $1.5 million in bribes over a period of time for awarding contracts related to private prisons and other things within the Department of Corrections.
Turner, you mentioned Jerry Turner. There's legislation in the House that passed the House to establish these mandatory best practices, but it died in committee, Bobby. So what's kind of next for this to get it in place?
Well, it died in the Senate committee, the Senate Accountability Committee in the 2016 session, and the chair of that committee, Senator Polk from down in Hattiesburg, said, I was talking to him the other day. He said that he wanted to let the new committee the oversight board be in place for a little while, but he said that he was ready to work with Senator Turner to make some changes in the 2017 session. So, and there's probably going to be some hearings and other activity on that before the 2017 session begins.
And of course, we've got this board that you mentioned, the Personal Service Contract Review Board. Having some different type of people on it. A guy from Tupelo, Bill Moran, is going to be on there. He's a former site manager for FMC Technology. So kind of changing up the makeup of this board, Bobby. What are they looking to do with that?
Yeah, that's right, Brad. What they did is the old board was the members of the old board were all agency heads. Uh, so in effect, it was, you know, the in some instances the agencies that wanted to award these contracts were providing the oversight at the same time. So the new board, that was a key thing that was done in the 2015 session. It changed the makeup of the board. So now there's 4 private citizens, if you will, no way associated with state government, appointed by the governor, lieutenant governor, and then 2 agency heads remain on the board, the chair of the personnel board and 1 other agency head. And one of those is Bill Moran from Tupelo, who I've corresponded with him a good bit through the years. He's been real active and concerned about the public employees retirement system, the pension plan for the state employees. He was concerned that was underfunded, and he does a lot of. He's very thorough in doing his homework and studying those types of issues. So I'm sure he'll be a conscientious member of that board in the coming years.
And you look at the whole Christopher Epps situation and just that corruption there, Bobby. I mean, where was the breakdown? Was it just simply a matter of not enough accountability or oversight, which obviously is what they're trying to do now?
Yeah, that and there's just so much money in the private prison industry in this state. It just, you know, and it just apparently there was just a system of corruption over there. You know, one of the people who has been indicted, who's yet to plead guilty, he's scheduled to go to trial, is a former state senator from up in Alcorn, Tishomingo area, named Herb Benjamin. He was he had some companies that dealt with managing prisons, and he was indicted for giving contracts to giving bribes to Epps and to who helped him get those contracts for prisons across the state. Other people have been indicted too, and you know, there was a hearing last week in federal court where they were trying to determine I guess the main thrust of the hearing was trying to determine just how many years Epps should get for pleading guilty, and that was continued. But one thing that came out during that hearing is the prosecutor said there was probably going to be more indictments coming in the next several months of additional people involved in that corruption case.
Well, let's move on to the state budget, Bobby, the state budget battle, if you will. Governor Bryan, of course, has had to make some budget cuts in recent months. And one of the agencies that's been hit by this is the Mississippi Department of Health. You had a story last week regarding that. Mary Currier, health officer for the Department of Health, said that her agency's general fund appropriation cut by $4 million or 11%. And it's looking like, Bobby, they're going to have to lace people off and cut back some services. How bad could this be for this Department of Health?
Well, they're talking about laying people off, cutting back services, including stopping a program that provided extra efforts to combat infant mortality, the high infant mortality rate in Mississippi. That program, she said, was going to have to be cut, and they were going to make some changes in regards to they regulate a number of different things, including restaurants. So she talked about having to change the way they regulate restaurants and other things, which she said they were going to still do that and ensure the restaurants were safe. But, you know, she said one thing, for instance, one thing they might do if the restaurant got an A, it may, when the last time it was inspected, they may delay the inspection a little longer than they normally would have in the past. But, you know, and that's, and there's 2 things going on with the budget, Brad. That's, you know, the layoffs that we hear about and the cutbacks at Department of Health, big cutbacks at mental health. That's because of the budget appropriation those agencies got during the 2016 session. Right now, we're still trying to finish out the budget year for the budget that was appropriated during the 2015 session. And revenue was short, is coming way short for 2015. So there's a thought that there may have to be a special session in the coming weeks to transfer some additional money into the budget into the agencies for the current budget year, just to finish out through June 30th. And then when the new budget year starts on July 1st, all these agencies are talking about cuts because of the budget that was passed in the 2016 session. If that makes sense. It's kind of complicated you got 2 budget years running together.
Right, and you got July 1st again is when the new fiscal year starts. I was going to ask you, Bobby, what are you kind of looking to happen between now and then? I know there's a lot of agencies still trying to just figure out what the impact might be of these budget cuts.
Well, they're figuring out the impact for the new fiscal year, which starts on July 1st. But the governor and lieutenant governor and the political leadership is, they're still going to, if revenue doesn't pick up dramatically during the next couple of weeks, there's going to be some money transferred from the rainy day fund just to pay for the bills for the current budget year, and that may entail a special session.
Okay, well, good stuff, Bobby. And that's it for this episode of Capitol View. If you missed any of it or just want to watch it again, we'll have the replay available here at djournal.com, coming to you every Monday around 2 p.m., talking about what's going on down there in Jackson. Be sure to give Bobby a follow on Twitter at BobbyHarrison9. You can also check him out on the latest podcast of The Memo, which is now up. We do The Memo every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Monday's episode is up. You can listen to that for free on iTunes, your podcast app, or at memo.djournal.com. So that's it for this week. We'll be back next Monday. Until then, have a good one.